claiming ownership was very transparent.
Are you confirming that the commission was involved in the transfer of ownership from one end to the buyers, from whatever end to the buyers?
No, I'm rather confirming that the commission at one stage or another would need to be involved in order for the buyer of the assets to claim full legal ownership. They would have to show who they bought it from, and if they buy it from the commission, they may have to show proof from the commission that they bought that asset, which could be the receipt plus something else.
See, Mr. Kuraglu, you see, the use of the words could, may, and should, for me, are very uncertain. Is that account your account as for your experience, or are you testifying as to what is expected of the commission?
Yeah, up to the point in which I give you a receipt, there is nothing like could or may, because that actually happened. So I could only bring in could or may after the point of receipt, which I have not, or which we have not reached. But assuming that there are other processes after the receipting, there is a licensing department with the police and so on, I have not got to that process. So what I could do was to reasonably assume with if or could.
Fair enough. Back to the identity of the buyers. You see, to the committee's mind, it is important that the buyers are ascertained, not just to ensure that the process of auction was transparent and that the Gambian people are assured of transparency, but also to ensure that assets do not fall on the wrong hands.
Sure.
And of course, the committee was saddled with several lawyers and at least 2 experienced accountants from your testimony, yourself and one of the commissioners, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yes.
Yes. And if I may confess, I do have a bit of an accounting background, ACCA as well. And I would say, from the knowledge I have from ACCA and the law, I know that in such a process, a reasonable professional would have averted their mind to anti-money laundering laws and terrorism financing laws. And I'm sure it is noted that the items being sold are tractors and that a terrorist perhaps might have no use for a tractor. But indulge me here. It is about averting your mind to such possibilities. And that alone should have warranted a policy for the ascertainment of the identity of every single buyer. Don't you agree?
Yes, I think what you said sounds reasonable. But if you looked at the process also, there are processes within processes. There is the process of the auctioning, which is a standard procedure, with standard norms. So within that process of auctioning, precaution is taken to make sure that the genuine highest bidder gets it. Now, that is why I said, with regard to the second stage, which is after the genuine highest bidder gets the deal, the second stage about identification, I'm fully aware of the concern you raise. However, I can very reasonably say that everybody who appeared on my list of buyers was real. I saw them, met them at the point in which they made the highest bidder, and it was transparent. Their names are here. If you have any particular reservation about any of the buyers on my list, maybe you'll be more specific with your concern.
Well, we will definitely get to that, I promise you, Mr. Kurang. But my first reservation is to the lack of a policy around ascertaining identity. And I can appreciate what you had earlier stated, that this is the commencement of the process, and the process would conclude with the actual transfer, and perhaps along the line, the verification can be made. And perhaps I can appreciate that at the point of the auction, verification would be a bit premature. And I can agree with you on that.
But just to add in, I do vividly remember one of the police officers present at the scene, asking for ID cards before we write receipt. I vivid, not maybe in all cases, but I do. But like I said, if anybody has any reservation about anybody on our list, then we are ready. I'm ready to address it.
Thank you. You see, the reason we ask before we move on is, aside from the other two reasons I had informed you about, is how is the public to know that even the president of the Gambia did not send proxies to buy tractors for him? Or perhaps, let me be more insane and say, you see, the former president was a very, very lavish person, as perhaps the commission has established. And what if he also sent somebody to buy back every single one of his properties? There should be some form of audit to ascertain where reasonably, of course, we don't expect the commission to know where every single property is, but to reasonably know where properties would end up. Do you agree with me?
Well, partly, because, like you said, we should avert our mind and be concerned with who the buyer is and the risk that the buyer could be somebody that may not necessarily be in the interest of the public or in the public interest. However, if you decide to go and choose a particular procedure, I do believe if that is a legal procedure, you have to be in tune with the legal requirements of that procedure. In other words, if you choose to do an auction, and you say an auction is a legal process, and you want to raise questions about the auctioning, then you would have to avert to whether the auction, that there is anything that is done that is not legally acceptable in an auction. That's one. Yeah, the only concern about the ex-president, I know the ex-president could be, hanging on one of the lawyers on that table. Nobody can discount it out. Or one of the MPs, or one of the journalists, or maybe one of the witnesses. Anything is possible. Because you cannot discount a state power of an ex-president. However, like I said, I will repeat what I said before. If anybody have any question about any particular buyer on my list, I'm ready to entertain that question.
Mr. Kurang, your wish is my command. I will direct you to number 6. O.C. Christ.
Yes.
Do you remember who O.C. Christ is?
Yes, I remember O.C. Christ.
Is this an individual or an organization?
I remember O.C. Christ because I have seen O.C. Christ maybe outside this, I've seen a shop in Brikamaba, and I know because that shop sells spare parts. And then when the day of the auction happened, when the man appeared, he's a Nigerian man, and we had a conversation that I discovered that he is the man behind the O.C. Christ spare parts shop that has a shop in Brikamaba. I believe possibly it is still there. And the man himself, whose name is Christ, I believe he's still there. So I can say yes, O.C. Christ is a real person with a real business.
So what does the O and the C stand for? Or is O.C. is it Christ or Christ?
Usually Nigerians make short names because some of the names tend to be traditionally very long. So they give you a short form, but I'm sure the O and the C and the Christ all stand for something longer.
So even the Christ is not long enough. It's a short form.
I believe even the word Christ there is a short form of a longer thing.
However,
Christopher maybe. Yes.
So do you at least know what the O and the C stand for?
O.C. Christ, yeah, I mean, I at this moment as I'm sitting down, I will not be able to tell you. But I've met the individual and I can confirm that even after that, as I am crisscrossing the country, I always pass his shop and I see the same individual that we sold the tractor to.
So, O.C. Christ, as you put it, I read it as Christ, but I will take yours because you perhaps have acquainted more.
Yeah, I would call it Christ before, but then when I talked to him, I realized that they pronounce it as Christ. So that's why I said the Christ there maybe stands for a longer name.
It brings me a lot of comfort to say Christ instead of Christ, to avoid the connotations.
Good.
However, O.C. Christ has appeared on severally on this list. Isn't that so?
Yeah, I see O.C. Christ here. 1, 2,
about 6 times.
3, 4, 5. Yes, he sells spare parts. So actually, I think he was very interested in acquiring, but you can see that he didn't go for high value items. He went for the like scrap. He went for 2 scraps here or so, or 3. Yeah, 4 of them, because he is a spare part dealer. So any vehicle that is considered to be defined as the valuer, as scrap or not functioning, maybe some parts of a tractor, he normally interested in those because I believe maybe he find a use for every single part of a tractor in his spare parts shop.
Thank you. With regards to O.C. Christ, I'm particularly interested in number 17. Can you break down number 17 for the record and for the committee carefully?
Number 17 was 24 June 2018. O.C. Christ is the buyer. It was a scrap Mahindra tractor at Somita Police. It was a reserve price of 30,000, and we sold it to 25,000. Yes, this was one of 2 occasions in which, out of 43, the item was sold for less than the reserve price.
So, tracking back to our very prestigious lecture from Jollof Tutors.
Not from Jollof Tutor, from Mamadi.
Fair enough. From your humble self.
Okay.
Taking us through the concept of a reserve price. And the committee's understanding now from that lecture is that the reserve price is the base price. And it is from that price that the auction commences. And ordinarily, at the end of the auction, the final bidding price should be a price that is greater than the reserve price.
Yeah.
I would allow you latitude to explain the anomaly
Yeah.
with regards to number 17. Because the reserve price
Yes.
was 3,000 and it was sold, sorry, 30,000.
30,000.
30,000.
Yeah.
My apologies. And it was sold for 25,000.
Yes.
A loss of 5,000.
Yes.
Please put us through.
Like it's described here, it's a scrap described by the valuer, and I remember it very well at Somita police station. These were parts of a tractor lying down. You understand? But because it came from a tractor and together they are considered as scrap, this was the last item at Somita police. And we had to go, and there was nobody interested in buying it. I took responsibility. As I said, there are two cases in which they were sold for less than the reserve price. This is one of them. I had to take responsibility. And the decision I had to make was, do I leave the scrap lying there after all the others are sold? A single scrap there in charge of the police, and what happens? Or there is a man there that is offering that he has 25,000 to pay for it. Accept the 25,000 and move to Kanilai or the next place. That was the decision I had to make. So, as I said, I took responsibility and sold it to him, with the advice and of the other my colleagues that were around, and let him have it at that price so we can clear that place and move to the next.
Thank you, Mr. Koran.
Yes.
You see, I have two concerns
Yes.
with that narrative.
Okay.
The first concern is that by selling it for 25,000, you conducted your own valuation. Do you agree?
No, I don't agree. I did not do a valuation. I took a decision
You see that
on the valuation that was before me.
the valuation that was before you was 30,000.
Yes.
You decided to sell it for 25,000. Of course,
Yes.
there's other components that advise that decision.
Yes.
However, by doing that, you inadvertently valued the scrap Mahindra tractor.
Yeah, I concluded that the value that was there at that moment, like I said, this was 2 out of 43 circumstances. The market you couldn't find somebody to buy it at that price at that moment.
And I acknowledge that it's only 2 instances out of 43, in fact 44, if I may add the plow.
Yeah.
And for that, I must say it's exceptional. And if I ever have an auction, I will not forget the name Alhaji Mamadi Quran. However, in this instance, would you agree with me that that conclusion was an inadvertent valuation of the property?
I mean, you are also an accountant, so exceptional valuation is, or exceptional decision in relation to this asset, it was what I took. Like I said, I took responsibility for it because that was what was reasonable at that time. I mean, you put 5,000 less with for one item remaining there. Even to bring back the whole team there again on another day, the fuel alone will cost you more than 5,000. So I have to make an economic decision, reasonable under the circumstances.
Thank you, Mr. Kurang.
Yeah.
And just to clarify the record, I am a lawyer. I do have accounting background, but a lawyer.
Sure, I know. There's exception in law also, all over.
Definitely, but you would appreciate that I cannot be two professionals at once. However, that we can have over tea after the testimony.
Sure.
I appreciate your rationale, and I appreciate the initiative exemplified at that time. And it brings me to my second concern, which was, in this particular instance, you did show initiative, and I would want to ask, did you sought the approval of the commission before concluding on a price of 25 for Mr. O.C. Christ?
At this moment, no.
Thank you. You see, that's my other concern. Not that there was no approval, because, again, you are also an advisor to the commission.
Yeah.
But in this particular instance, you sort of were very comfortable advising. But in other instances, such as identity, you ought to have advised, being an accountant. I mean, the burden is not yours alone, but you have to acknowledge that you ought to have advised the commission as to mechanisms for transparency.
I mean, you have to look at the context in this case of identity of the buyers. Like I said, the vehicles are under the control of the police, technically. The vehicle control department at the State House control the vehicles. So, and they were part of this process that we are talking about. Knowing that final title of a vehicle is not obtained at the auction site, it has to be a process in which it becomes perfectly legal to become an owner at the police station or the traffic, whatever. And there are officers there. You know, I believe that it will come to a point in which the state, before it stamps on the approval or license or ownership of a vehicle, identity of the owner is established. And at that point, the owner must bring the receipt, which must tally with the identity that was being sought to register the vehicle in.
Thank you. So just to put a conclusion on the undervaluation, the other item was the item number 28. If you could just read it out so that we can move on this issue.
Yeah, item number 28 is 1 out of 44. 2 is the second one out of the 44, in which we sold less than the reserve price. It was similar. It's a scrap item, and it was sold to one Modul Lamin Sise. It's in Kanilai. I think so. Is it? Yeah, in Kanilai, where the reserve price was 20, and it was sold for 10,000.
I believe the same circumstances ensued.
Yeah, the same circumstances.
They were both scrap.
Yeah.
Again, I will put the assertion to you that in these two circumstances, you assume the role of two people. Mr. Njai, which was valuation, and Mr. Jammeh, who was the auctioneer. Would you agree?
No, I didn't assume the role of any of them. I was put in charge of the process. The auctioneer would have done all what he could do. So I didn't do that. He did all what he could do, and he couldn't dispose it at that price. The valuer had already done his valuation. Obviously, the time he did the valuation was not the very day that the item was sold. So, I mean, if you had called him on that day, would he have given the same value to the scrap? Well, that's open to debate. But they all still had their roles. And my role, was to make a decision, a final decision, as being the representative of the commission on site, to do what I felt was in the public interest at that moment in time. There were 3 days, we could see, and all these transactions happened in 3 days. And, there is a lot of pressure then, but I think knowing that overall, for these 3 days, more than $5 million is above the reserve price. I would assume that they were done in good faith.
Thank you, Mr. Kola. I know I promised that would be the last, but just lastly on that issue, what was the commission's or commissioner's reaction when you reported the undervaluation or the undersales of these two items, specifically just these two items?
I mean, the commission did not ask me any question on these two valuations, either by written or...
Thank you.
I think they were more interested in the ones where I made huge profit.
Thank you. And we'll get to those right now. In fact, it seems like you're somewhat of a magician. Because if we look at 26, can you read out number 26 for us?
Yeah, number 26 was on the 5th of June. 25th of June, 26th of June, sorry, 25th of June 2018.
Mm-hmm.
It was a sale of a tractor, Massey Ferguson tractor, to Jar Oil Company. It was Massey Ferguson 8280, that was in Kanilai. There was a reserve price of $75,000. And at the end of the auction process, we managed to sell it for $1,250,000. So it was $1,175,000 above the reserve price we sold it for.
Please walk us through how this was possible. Was it that Alhaji Mamadi Kuraun became a magician that day, or Mr. Jammeh was ringing the bell rigorously?
Well, for you to get 1.2 million, you must be ringing the bell for a long time. The bell was going on for a long time. Well, like I said, this was a tractor, maybe it looks like a used tractor because it was parked in Kanilai in the bushes. And I felt, I don't know, for whatever reason, some businessmen were very keen in getting this particular Massey Ferguson. Jar Oil, the owner of the company, was himself present, and he was bidding. There were other businessmen that were bidding. And I was never anticipating that the bidding will go up to that level. But so long as people are bidding, whenever the auctioneer looks at me, I say, keep ringing. So he kept ringing until $1 million, until 1.2 million when the last competitor dropped out. And then the one who won it, which is the Jar Oil, came with 1,250,000. At that point, nobody else, the bell rang for a couple of times, and nobody else came with something higher. So I when the auctioneer asked me if he could ring the bell, I said yes. So he rang the bell on 1,250,000, and I asked for the money there, and then got the money. Obviously, it looks that anybody can ask for. And the commissioners, when I came, they were equally, saying this is not possible. How could you sell a tractor for this much? And the auctioneer also told me at that moment that he couldn't remember in his experience when somebody sold a vehicle in a government auction up to that amount. Maybe you could remember.
I don't believe I've been to any government auction. I'm not that privileged. But Mr. Kura, with all seriousness, this is an impressive sale. One that will equally raise eyebrows, just like the undersale equally raised eyebrows. Could you walk us through, being an accountant, a seasoned one at that, why this could be so? As you had said, even the commissioners were surprised.
Yes. I think maybe most of the questions you would be asking, they were also lawyers. And when I went back to the commission, out of the list of 44 items, this was the main discussion. I think the commissioner spent a day trying for me to justify, just like you are doing, how could a tractor be sold for 1.2 million? So anybody, maybe somebody could see it and think that there is something to this which is not true. So they asked me, what kind of tractor is it? I described it. The picture was there. The valuer had taken a picture of the Massey Ferguson. And they went and checked also online what is the cost of a Massey Ferguson at that moment. And I think the value that came on was, maybe not even far, a new one was not far from what we sold the old one for. That was a question. Then they wanted to verify also, because they had skepticism, the commissioners had doubts whether this was a real transaction or it was something not fishy about it. They asked the valuer, they called the valuer at that moment to justify, whether this 75,000 valuation was actually what he meant. And we were all there. The phone was on speaker, and the valuer stood by his valuation. I didn't remember him changing his value. Then the commissioner, the lead counsel, and the chairperson and the other commissioners wanted to cancel the transaction because they just didn't trust it. How could somebody sell a tractor for 1.2 million? Well, I told them, well, for me, I have been sent as an agent. I did my job to the best of my ability. If they want to cancel it, I have no power to stop them. But if I was the person that bought this deal and want to cancel it, I'll just take a legal process. I told them that the buyer has the right. And I think they called the buyer or something to try to talk to him. And he was, because I know that he painfully paid for this. So if somebody tells him that what you painfully paid for yesterday or day before yesterday, we are about thinking about canceling it, he would have reasonably said, well, I will take legal action to defend my right to the auction. Because when he bought it, I made sure he paid. He said he didn't have cash. I told him to give me a check right there. So he wrote the check. So he felt that he's legally entitled to it. And later, we spent a whole day arguing. I was really a bit, this led to so many things because I was a bit pissed off with the commissioners, and eventually they realized that they could not cancel the transaction. I had the lead counsel telling the chairperson we had no legal basis to cancel the deal. I challenge them. If you think you have a legal basis to cancel the deal, go ahead. So, but what I think happened was, it was a transparent thing. The interesting thing was, when I received the commissioner's report, I could remember there are 3 tractors like this Massey Ferguson. What I could remember. I think maybe there were 2 in Kanilai, 1 in Sifo, in the Jammeh'S farms in Sifo. We visited it. That looked exactly like this. But when I look at the sales report that the commission did after I left, I was anticipating that the other tractors that they are behind, just like this one, will be sold for similar. But I didn't see that. I didn't see, because we all didn't see it in the report. Didn't see it in the list. Because that would have at least been something comparable. So I think for me, this was a proud moment for me and the team, that we were able to make this deal. People know in a government auction there are a lot of games you can play. We didn't play any games, we just played a fair rule.
Thank you, Mr. Koran. And it's interesting that you mentioned that this number 26, to be precise, caused a rift between yourself, the commissioners, and lead counsel. But before I go to the specifics of that rift, perhaps we can do so after the break, the lunch break. Could we go through the other assets that also have very high sale values from their reserve price? Now, I understand this is an auction, and you know, though it is expected that the price of sale would be higher than the base price. But if we could look at some of these, such as number 10, please itemize that for us.
Yes.
If you perhaps could, we could go through them one by one. Number 10, let's look at number 10.
Number 10 was 24th June. 24th of June, one Bubakar Jaite bought a John Deere 5403 tractor with chassis number PY5403C001383 at Sibano Police Station. The reserve price was 80,000 and we sold it for 400,000. Yes. So, well, they want it, they saw the tractor, they want it, they view it, they're satisfied with it, we did a bidding, they bid it. I think usually when you have a high price like this, it happens that a few people are interested in the item and they don't want to leave it for each other, and you know, we have no time to let them negotiate. We just want to give it to the highest bidder at that moment. So other people make attempts maybe to get it, because the tractors may be in, even though they all came the same year, they may be in different conditions depending on who was handling it. I mean, that's reasonable. So maybe they are satisfied with the condition in which it was, they competed over it, and the man who won it paid 400,000 as the highest bidder. That was number 10.
Let's look at number 11. From there, number 16.
Number 11, 24th June, a John Deere tractor bought by Sasita Agriculture and Land Development. This was some kind of organization. At Sibano Police. Yes. At Sibano Police, I remember there were quite a number of tractors there, but he paid 451,000 as the highest bidder. The reserve price was 75,000. Yes, again, this was, you know, very well attended, and there were a lot of competitors for this particular tractor also in the same Sibano, and Sasita emerged as the highest bidder. Normally, it happens that maybe because the same police station, somebody lose both of them, the 400,000 and the 451. So maybe the guy lost in this one, because he couldn't have 451, but then he won in the other one where there is 400,000. Nobody wants to go home empty-handed if they have the money with them.
The same happened in number 16, from a gap of 12,000 to 115,000.
Yes.
Number 32.
Number 32, Babukar Gassama.
And Dr. Babukar Gassama, indeed.
Yes, Babukar Gassama and Adamasala and Hadim Gai, these were all Kotu workshop. The tractors were in good condition. As you can see, the reserve price is 450, which at that time was very close to the price of a new one. In the workshop, they were, they were in good shape, so they paid good price. I think Adamasala was the owner of the clinic. Is it Lamtoro? Yes, I remember him. He came himself that he wanted a tractor for the hospital, for his private hospital. There was also Hadim Gai, also a businessman. I remember him personally. He came personally. So he paid 700,000 for one tractor, and he paid 650 for the second tractor. Adamasala paid 665,000 for one tractor, and Babukar Gassama paid 620 for the other tractor, and Lamin Sane paid 590 also for the other tractor. Kotu workshop was very contentious, I think, when we came later, because that was the workshop where the secretary to the cabinet came and tried to stop the sale. Yeah.
So we will look at that incident after the break. However, let's look at the item number 44 as well.
Item 44 is Babukar Jaite. It was a John Deere tractor. It was in Kanilai. Well, it's described here as scrap, but the value of value is at 25,000. After the bidding, we sold it for $150,000. It was a John Deere tractor.
Okay. Going back to item number 26. That is the item that sold to Jar Oil Company. You mentioned that in Kotu it was contentious, but I guess you meant it would be because of the interference or perceived interference.
Contentious maybe in two ways. First of all, there were a lot of interested buyers in Kotu, so the bidding was very competitive. I remember civil aviation was in Kotu also. Where is it? In number 38. The civil aviation was represented by one of their staff. So they bought the tractor for $535,000. Because it's an institution, they could not produce the money at that time. And there were other people who wanted to buy it, but obviously this was a government institution, and I kind of like let them have the deal and then bring the check maybe 1 or 2 days later, because it's a government institution. So it wasn't paid cash at that point, but it was also in Kotu. But obviously they paid for it.
But they won the bid.
Yes, they won the bid, but when it comes to the payment, they didn't have the cash with them, or they didn't have the check with them. So I think we let him go back to the office.
Because of the goodwill?
Yeah, because of it's a government institution.
So back to Jar Oil Company and their payment of a whopping 1.2. Was it competitive?
Yes, it was very competitive.
Could you recall any other bidders that were interested in?
Yes, I remember there were several people there at the bidding process, but I remember two businessmen went that far. Maybe most people dropped by the time it reached 500,000. I mean, not many people could be willing to buy an asset for 1 million cash. So the last bidding from 1 million all the way up, was Oil and another businessman.
Do you remember the businessman?
I think it's Mr. Jaite also.
That's fine.
Yeah.
What about?
Oil ended up winning it.
That's fine. That's fine. What about? Of course, a value was attached to it by Mr. Njai, but from your perception of the Mercy Ferguson,
Yeah.
was it in good condition from the naked eye?
This was almost 1.5 years after Jammeh left. So the vehicle was parked, like I said, it wasn't parked in a parking lot, it was parked in the bushes, in a grassy area. If you park a vehicle for 1.5 years, maybe 2 rains have gone on it and it hasn't moved, and it's a tractor. I am not technical. I knew it's not a new one, obviously. But it was packed, it's you could say it's a used one, maybe. But like I said, there were 3 of them, in total, I remember.
Okay. Let's look at the total amount that was recouped that day or within those 3 days.
Yeah.
Can you read it out?
You have here 10,572,000
from a total reserve price of?
From a total reserve price of 4,974,500. The sales receipt amounted to 10,572,000.
And the profit?
That means the gain or above the profit was 5,597,500 above the reserve price.
From the business point of view, this was a very successful business. Wouldn't you say so?
Yes. That's why I said the commission lost billions. If they had continued with this process, this whole thing would have been much more better for the taxpayer in terms of value.
Right. Before we go on to the break, I would like you to look at the exhibits that follow that are attached to that schedule.
Yes.
There are several receipts.
Yes.
Receipts for, say, tractors.
Yes.
Who issued these receipts?
Yeah, like I said, all these receipts are my signature.
And did the commission not have its own receipts? They seem to be generic receipts.
Yes, for this, these were generic receipts.
And did the commissioners take the receipts once you submitted them as part of your report?
Yes. This, I had the mandate, so I issued it, and that was not an issue.
As part of the receipts, you mentioned that your signature is on the receipts. What signature are you referring to? Is it in the portion that is allocated for managers sign?
Yes.
And that is consistently your signature?
That's my signature, yes.
Did you require the successful bidders to sign anywhere?
Not on this. Not on this. My anticipation is that maybe during the transfer process, because the vehicle controls unit had that, they would have use this receipt as an evidence to complete the paper process as the first step of the paper and to a vehicle registration process.
Thank you, Mr. Kura. Honorable Chair, I believe it's a convenient time for us to take our lunch break. After that, we could continue with the witness's testimony.
Thank you, Council. This is a convenient time for us to have a lunch break and come back at quarter past three. Meeting adjourned.
It's been described as a bold and urgent step to addressing Nigeria's deepening insecurity and constitutional crisis. A coalition of elder statesmen,